All right, we can get going, and I think people will continue to join as we go. But thank you, everyone, for joining us today for this webinar. We're going to chat about the food date labeling compliance, specifically in regards to the Food Label Act of 2023, and we'll talk about the details of that in a moment. I'm Todd Rose. I'm the Director of Marketing here at ClearObject. With me is Derek Bliley. He's our VP of Product. He knows everything you need to know about pretty much everything. So we'll get over to him in a bit, but first you're stuck with me. So let's dive in and get going. And again, as Janine mentioned, you can put questions and things in there as well. We'll try and get to everything. So today we're going to just cover a few things. First, kind of the why now. Why are we talking about this? There's some new regulations, or at least some new themes and potential regulations coming down that want to make sure everybody is aware of. We've been reading a lot about. Talk about some of the benefits of why you should care. Although if you're on this call, I'm guessing you already care and know about that, but we'll cover that as well. And Derek's going to walk you through kind of Vision AI for food and beverage, an area that we've been doing a lot of work in, helping out a lot of companies, probably similar to yours. And then we do have time at the end for Q&A. Come on. Oh, there we go. All right, so feel free to join the conversation. You can chat with other folks in the chat window there, which is a little discussion bubble. But then if you're not familiar with Google Meet, you've got the three shapes down there, the triangle, square, circle. When you open that up, you get to the official Q&A area. You also get to polls. We will be doing a poll later today, which should pop up on your screen when we launch it. But if it doesn't, you can find it in there as well. And of course, as we start almost any good discussion, let's just say, Derek and I, we are not lawyers. So we are going to be talking about some regulations, some rules, some things that are coming down from the government. This is not actual legal advice. This is just a way to help increase awareness and share our perspective on things. If you are making decisions on anything, please consult with your own legal counsel, especially as laws and rules can vary greatly, whether you're doing interstate commerce, intrastate commerce, international, all those things. There's lots of different layers that you need to be aware of and consider. So please chat with your own internal experts. All right, so why now? Why are we talking about this? So we've been noticing trends. There's a lot of new regulations coming, either proposed or that have launched. We're going to spend most of the time today talking about the Food Label Act of 2023, why we care about that. I'm going to touch a little bit on the Food Safety Modernization Act with the food traceability final rule, and then the SEC climate rule, which may not impact many of you today or even in the next couple of years, but I think is something important to be aware of as we see it growing, the awareness of that there for the climate. And a lot of states are starting to take up certain things around that as well. So depending on where you're located, similar rules may be impacting you sooner. So the Food Date Labeling Act of 2023. First of all, this is not passed. I'll go into exactly where it is in the system, but it is out there. And that means that people have been asking about it. There are concerns about labeling. Today, it's really kind of the Wild West as far as what you can put on a package. Most people are following some simple guidelines that make it easy to go. But even just hitting a few stores, I was walking through Costco the other day, and I took some pictures. So you've got your Best Buy, you've got a boxed on, which is kind of meaningless to me. Then you've got your sell by, but how long is it good after the sell by date? I don't really know. Things there. So part of the goal of why this is out there is to create a little more consistency so that consumers can understand. Then there's also the things like being able to trace things back, lot codes, things there, which we'll talk about. So the proposal is really to require specific language. So the quality date, which is the Best Buy date, and specific ways that you say that and use that on the labels. And then the discard date, which is the use by date. So discard date, of course, is, hey, it may not be safe to use after this, while the quality date is more of, hey, this may not be at peak quality, but it's still safe to use. Now the act where it stands is it was introduced back in May of last year, so almost a year ago. And then it was pretty quickly referred into the subcommittee where it's being studied. Now, Congress has lots of things on their plate. If you follow the news, they're always talking about what they're doing or not doing. So there's a lot going on there. So sometimes things never come out of subcommittee. They just go there and die. Other times they can quickly come out and get passed. So whether or not this does come out and get passed, it is indicative of a trend of more stringent rules and things. So I think it's really helpful to be aware of it, to make sure that we are labeling things properly and accurately and consistently, and to just be aware of what may be coming down. Now, if this does pass right now, it is recommended that they begin to enforce it in January of 2026. That may change. It often does change. That's just a good date to keep in mind, though. And why was it proposed? So a few things. So as I mentioned already, the transparency. They really want to make it easier for consumers to understand what the labels mean and just have more consistency across everything. And part of it is health and safety. And there's other rules that are more focused on this that we'll talk about a little bit. But the use by and best by is the hope there is that folks understand what those mean. And then that also leads to less food waste, which will help the environment. So there's a tremendous amount of food waste, especially in the US where we're based. And there's even things around some of the proposals on this. I don't know if I buy into this because I used to work for a food company and we tried to donate our older product. That was still good, and it was challenging because of state laws. But part of this is they hope that having more consistency here will allow folks to donate food to other places instead of just disposing it if it gets past a certain date or things. So lots of different ways this may help the environment. Certainly part of health and safety, and then that transparency, especially when it comes to tracking in case there ever is an issue. So there's lots of benefits to complying with this, whether or not it does pass. The first is really increased efficiency. So today, even if it's not a federal regulation, lots of your retailers or distributors, other parts in the distribution chain, they will have rules about what kind of things need to be labeled. Your state probably has its own rules. And if like a retailer or a distributor notices, hey, we don't have a label on some of these in this here, they may discard and send back the whole batch. If you aren't doing quality checks on the line, you may have to stop the machines, fix whatever problem is happening. That'll slow down things there. So making sure you comply with the Food Labeling Act really helps increase efficiency, reduce waste, really make the most out of everything there. The next is building consumer trust. So as I mentioned, consumers expect these labels on there. They want to be able to understand them. There's constantly asked for new types of labeling across all the packaging, whether is this gluten-free, are there allergens, are there things there? But as far as the food safety and the code date labels, that is something that they expect on any food product. They want to see it, they want to be able to read it, and they notice it when it's not there. Distributor relationships, I mentioned how those distributors probably have their own rules. They may reject shipments if they don't think things are labeled properly. So you want to stay in good standing with them, because if you don't get distributed, that hurts the bottom line. So helping there, and it may open up additional distributors. I know places like Walmart, other folks like that have very strict rules on how things are labeled as well. So you want to make sure you are following all of their rules. And then consumer safety. None of us want our products to hurt anybody. In the unfortunate event of a recall, you want to make sure that those lot codes are on there and legible. You want to be able to make sure that you can trace it back to, like, why is this lot bad? What ingredients are in there? Where did those ingredients come from? Even what farms did those come from? So you can trace all of that back and get that information. And the more accurate your labeling is, and the better you do for that, I mean, there may be situations where you can leave some of the product on the shelves. For brand reasons, you may take it all off, but it's good to have that option. And then avoid any penalties. I mean, again, the worst penalty is if some consumers are actually harmed and get sick from any products of yours, but there's other things as well. As we mentioned, distributors might reject products. There's possibilities of the FDA levying fines, state agencies, things as there, even just not passing an inspection when they come in if they notice that labels aren't being printed properly. All the possibilities there. I was chatting with someone yesterday. They were talking about how they are they work very hard to make sure they follow all these things because they have to do their mock recalls at least once a year, get all that information, get all that there, and make sure they have everything in a row. So then the Food Safety Modernization Act is not directly linked to the Food Date Label Act. There is certainly overlap in some of these things here. So this really was to do more of a shift. So the FDA historically has been responding to foodborne illnesses. Now they really want to focus more on preventing them. I mean, each year, 48 million people reportedly get sick from foodborne illnesses, diseases. 128,000 people hospitalized and 3,000 or more die. We'd love to get that number down to zero. And I mean, nobody wants to be part of, well, the cause of that or part of a press story about how that happens. So that act is really there. The key thing, part of that, is that food traceability final rule. So this is really about the record keeping requirements on the back end to allow for faster identification and removal of anything that's potentially dangerous. Once you identify something as being dangerous, you do need to report that to the FDA within 72 hours. The faster, the better. But to have a plan, and that's where a lot of those things like mock recalls, and that's a benefit there, is making sure that you can respond if something should happen. It certainly feels like we're getting more and more recalls these days. I don't know if that's just better press or because Costco emails me every time it happens. But when I'm trying to dig into the data, it looks like more recalls are actually happening. Part of the reason there is less choice in ingredients and things, where as those consolidate, if something goes wrong in just one of those facilities, it can really move through the whole food chain. So it's important to know where things come from, be able to pull those records easily, those key data elements, the critical tracking events, and you can go look at the Food Safety Modernization Act to really get the details on all of that and what those data elements and tracking events are. And then the last one, the SEC Climate Disclosure Rule. So right now, this only impacts US public companies, but there's a point in the future where they might start working at people in their further down their supply chain as well. So I think it's important to be aware of this, even if you're not a public company, or even if you're under a $75 million public company there. So this comes in phases over the years. So if you're 700 million plus in publicly held shares in 2026, they're going to start enforcing this one. If you're below that in 2028, so there is time. And as often happens, they may push those deadlines, but it's probably better to get compliance before then if you can. And this is really about disclosing what your emissions are. And they break those into 3 different categories. You got scope 1, which those are really direct emissions owned or controlled by you. So your factories, if you have any trucks or distribution that's actually owned by you, those facilities there. Scope 2 then goes to include where you're purchasing your energy from. So you need to disclose that and what that emissions are that's part of you. Now, scope 3 is not part of this rule. It was originally proposed to be part of this rule, but it was successfully lobbied or negotiated to remove it. And these are any emissions created from your entire value chain. And that's where this may impact more of you, even if you aren't a public company. So if you're supplying ingredients or chicken, or which could be an ingredient, anything like that, anywhere along the way, folks that you're supplying that to may come to you asking for that emissions information. And then depending on the state you're in, you may already have to provide that information, even if you aren't a public company, or if even the scope 3 things like California and other states are trying to copy that California law. So being aware of what your emissions are, knowing how you track it, and things there as well could be important for you. So now that I've scared you with all these new laws and regulations and things you need to be doing to track things, I'm going to pass it over to Derek, who can talk to you a little bit about how ClearObject and our vision systems can help you track that and be prepared for these types of things. So over to you, Derek.
All right, thanks, Todd. Yeah, so Derek Wiley, VP of Product. One of our products here within ClearObject we call ClearVision. I'll talk a little bit in detail of like what is a vision AI system, what is the components of that, what's the problem we help solve specific around code date label, what does that look like, what are some other use cases as well within the food and beverage industry, and happy to answer any questions anyone might have as we go along the way in regards to what is vision and what does that look like. So with that, I'm going to start by just first, talking about what are the components of vision AI. What do I mean by that? And so in the best way of thinking of it that I like to talk about, if you can see it, and then we can train a model to see it as well, and we can turn that unstructured information into information. So in the video on the right, you'll see this is not a food process. This is not roasting any peanuts, as I think Mike asked yesterday. But what we're ultimately doing, this is a granite manufacturing process. But if I were to talk to an individual, say, hey, what information might you pull from this? What would be of interest to you if you could, turn each of these frames into insights, right? So what you see here is then when you're applying vision AI to a system like this to measure things such as the flame intensity, the water amount coming out of those nozzles, and being able to understand what are the fluctuations, what is that data telling me about that process, and now having a way to use vision to really help measure and understand what's going on. So that is what a vision AI system can do. It can start to infer information from that. So what are the outputs that we can really do with those vision systems? So we can automate tasks. We could take the output of that vision system. We could do a few different things with it. You could do things in real time, such as, what I'll refer to as automated process control. You could feed that back to a PLC controller that could adjust the line speed to get a better finish, knowing based on what the level of flame and water is. You might be able to adjust that flame and water level as well to, again, better control the quality of your product that's coming out of that line. And so if you think about the code date label, right, if I can understand what's happening in real time, and I'm have that information, what decisions do I want to make off of that, whether it's real time or, again, looking at the trends over a longer period of time that better help you make those decisions. So that's what I mean by the enhanced decision making, right? So now that I've got weeks, months, years of data collected to really understand what's the output, how's that impacted the quality, where are the trends occurring, I may be able to start to understand the root cause of failures that may be leading to those defects, or the labels not occurring, ultimately fixing some of those. And really what this does is just what we like to say is enables innovation. You're seeing it in self-driving cars, but also, hey, what does that mean within food and beverage, manufacturing in general? How can we use vision and this technology to really understand our operations and improve it? So specifically, you may have heard me mention the word edge, and you might be saying, what does edge-based vision system mean? When I refer to the edge, what I really mean is that the inferencing, the model making the decisions is all happening there on-prem, on the hardware. And the reason for that is really about the real-time aspect, being able to, so if you want to be able to infer that information, feed that to a controller to make the adjustments in real time, that all needs to be taking place there. And there's a few other components as well of a vision system, and I'll talk about the importance specifically around illumination in the next couple slides, especially when it comes to the code date label aspect that could be very important. But you have your lighting, your camera, a lens, and your image processing. That is where ClearObject comes in. We have our own IP created inference engine that allows those models to run in real time, 30 frames a second, be able to not just do the model inferencing, but as well as post-processing. And I'll talk about a little bit of what those aspects mean in a couple slides here specifically. But that gives you a high-level overview of what is an edge-based vision system. So I mentioned previously, part of a edge-based vision system is the lighting. Specifically, so why is that so important, right? Making sure that you have the right lighting, the light camera configuration, which again, ClearObject and we have the professional services to help spec and design those vision systems to make sure that you can capture real quality. So I give this example right here's a really hard to read. It's basically imprinted on the side of the packaging to be able to read that date. If you try to use a ring light or maybe just the standard lighting around versus what we use from a dome light perspective to really be able to pull out on a repeatable basis and an accuracy so that we can really read those that context. So in this next slide, you'll see an example. This video should play. Let's see. Can I get it to play? Yep. One second. I figured it out. So you'll see as I walk up to the light from a distance, you can't see. But as soon as I get up and you look straight down, you can see exactly the context of that code date label. And on the right side here, I demonstrate why that's important. So reflectivity, packaging is constantly changing. A lot of our customers write, hey, here's this line. We've got 30 different types of packages running down that line. We need to be able to read reliably the code date label on each of those. So obviously the different package material, as well as the contents of that package can have an impact on, how legible that can be. So again, back to the lighting. So you see, bottom example with the reflection you might get with a standard lighting configuration, where if, that text was printed, that's going to make that harder to read. Whereas the top is showing you, hey, with that dome light, you see it removes all the reflections very clearly. You can understand and read that text and understand where it is. So on the next slide, just give another example, right, in the level of detail that you can get down to. And again, this gets back to what can ClearObject help provide. Not only do we have the software that helps run the vision inferencing system, but we also can help spec the hardware. So in this case, you might look at this example. Depending on the use case, different lighting configurations, you might want better edge detection. So the one on the left may be more important. Whereas if you're trying to pick up all the details, the one in the middle where you can pick up, all those ingrains, that's just going to, this is just to help demonstrate that there's a lot of configurations that you could play with to get the best results for your modeling capability. So when it applies, what is our vision system doing when it applies to code date label? So really 4 outputs of the model. So that model is again running in real time, every package that runs by. We're looking for, is there a label, right? So in this case, when I talk about the label, I'm talking about that printed text that we have there. We can also count the packages. And then when we're also looking for the position of the label, And when we're looking for the position of the label, that's in reference to those packages where you have known points where the label should be printed. So whether that's a white box with a black background like we see there, a blank area, either way, we can identify that specific area as well. You can identify that, the centroid of the text. You can look at other variables of that text, understand is it overlapping, which ultimately gives you the position of that label. And we can, the benefit of our inference engine system is that, we can configure the outputs. Whatever is most important to you is what might be fed to a PLC to make the adjustments to, or to just do the rejection in the case where those are outside the limits of what you define. So we work with our customers to understand what are those limits and configure the system to do so appropriately. Then finally, it's just about the quality, right? Looking at the text, is it legible? Can we continue to read it? And giving that a quantifiable score that again can be used for rejection. You notice I put a few little dots there. What I'm trying to infer there is anything with the purple dots means for every single one of those inferences that is occurring, we are taking that information and we can pass it to, whether that's on-prem, in the cloud, to your to wherever you would like that central data repository. So you have a database that's going to tell you every single inference that's been made, what the results of those 4 vision outputs were, as well as the image. So now you've got a stored database that gives you the log of every image that's ever passed through the system with the known values around those 4 outputs. Similarly, we have a visualization hub where you can in real time visualize these inferences occurring. So if you've got you got 20 lines, you want to see and validate that each of those is up and running and monitoring those. We have a web application that allows you to access each of those individual systems or see those together to be able to validate that they're all up and running, the systems are all healthy, and again, see the real-time inferencing there on the line. And then finally, I talk about the configuration to a PLC. Really, that's about that automated process control. So that's where from the customers that we've worked with, the presence of the label, position of the label, and the quality of the label are the 3 major outputs that they're worried about to be able to determine, do they do a rejection? Do they feed that to an earlier point in the process to make the necessary adjustments to improve the quality of the output of their system? So you can see just when I talk about, hey, what does a visualization of this look like? That's where, something like the top right corner where it's calling out, hey, here's the area here's the area, here's the label, right? And given the context of what it's identified. So that's what we say, hey, it's providing that insights into that AI. I want it to be interpretive, meaning that you as a human, anybody can help learn, understand, and adopt.
Did you want to do that quiz here, Derek?
Oh yeah, sorry. Let's go back to that. Thanks for reminding me, Todd. I was going so fast. I would be interested. Hey, of those 4 outputs, is there one that you all see is the most important? And so yeah, I would just ask, hey, if you had to pick one, which one of those 4 would it be?
All right, if you aren't seeing the poll, you can click on the triangle, square, circle and go into polls, and you should see it there.
And, I was talking about the interpretability. I'll have to continue to do that while some people are voting. The interpretability component of this, what do I really mean? So, when we're helping customers adopt this technology, I always say, hey, 10% of it is the technology, so the hardware, 20% is the AI and the model, 70% of it is change management and working with our customers to help drive that change management, drive adoption, help people understand the value that this can create for the organization. So, our engagements typically start where, hey, we'll start with the single line, demonstrate the capability there. But when we do that, and I talk about the ability to be able to see in real time what the system's doing, That includes both the inferencing and the post-processing. So in real time, you could log in, see the screen, show your line operators, hey, look, here's what the system's doing. You can see it's reading every package as it goes by. It's classifying if the label, where the label is. It's comparing that. It's showing us here in the screen exactly what decisions it's making and the outputs that are coming out of that. What we've seen is that really helps just drive adoption and what I like to call interpretive AI and helping those humans.
Cool. We got a few responses. I'll end the poll there. I'm a little surprised nobody said position of a label, because that's one of the things I see most often when I'm snooping around stores. Of they are printed not in that nice little box that so many of these packages have these days. But yeah, a lot for quality, and then yeah, even just presence, and then counting those packages. And I mean, we've worked with, and these aren't. You can monitor many of these at once, right, Derek? It's not just each of these individually.
Correct. Yep. All of these. Yeah. So I wasn't asking as like, hey, pick one, because that's all we can do. So yeah, thanks for that clarification. If anybody was thinking that our system could do all 4 of these at one time, just trying to understand a little bit of like, hey, which of these may be the most important to use in your position.
Cool.
Yep. So what are some other vision AI use cases outside of just the code date label? Whether that is things like, so I talked about automated process control. One on the left, hey, looking at a bottle on in real time, identifying the fill level, and then feeding that information again back to a PLC that can adjust the controllers to determine the length of time at which each fill station is set up. So removing a manual process there from having that. So that system's just sitting there monitoring as the bottles come in and that liquid is filled. It's in real time being able to say what level that is. So that's one way customers are using it. Another one is around quality. So maybe it has nothing to do with feeding that information back, but today you're taking samples of your product. So we've set up vision systems. We can configure those vision systems in a way where we're capturing, at the right frequency. So which at your line speed, we're only getting the batch of that product. So you're not counting that defect multiple times. But instead of taking samples now, in this case, hey, how many blemishes are there in my French fries, right? And having to pull it off the line every 30 minutes, count your blemishes and validate that. Now you can constantly be measuring that value, so you have 100% quality control. Which again, when I talk about, hey, what are the advanced insights you can get from that? Just imagine knowing every single product that's going out your door and understanding, instead of sampling, you've been able to get 100% coverage of that from a quality perspective. And then the another way that you can leverage these vision systems is augmented interaction. So what I mean by that, a lot of the way our customers understand what happens in operations today is still a lot of manual input. While you have vision systems that can be there to do the automated process, understand the fill level, look for issues in the process, we can also use it to understand the operational behavior. So, hey, when did the customer when did the job setup begin? When did the line go down? How long was it down? Can we classify the reason for it down? Is there, how long was the operator there? All these things, because you now have a visual sensor, you could pick up all that information on that line rather than just, what might be a hardware sensor if it's just focused on one specific task. So again, anything that you can see visually, we can train a model to capture and learn from. We have covered a little bit in the food and beverage. We have use cases across many, so where we're leveraging the same technology. So where I've talked about our inference engine, ClearObject, ClearVision product. We are leveraging that same technology across industries. So retail, then others, again, you can see where those would be valuable, not just in retail or manufacturing, and then again back to the manufacturing. So really Vision's a unique space because there's so much opportunity. There's so much information that can be inferred from that, that we're finding many use cases for our system across those. So, I think I'll do a couple of my key takeaways. Todd, if you want to add anything else at the end of that, but really the Vision AI could be trained to monitor what's the most important to you, right? Is that the label presence quality, what we asked? Is it the product quality, size, speed, all of that? All of those can be your option. That's fine. But hey, just know that is possible. Specifically on the code date label, but really any Vision AI system, lighting is critical to being able to get consistent and accurate results. And so working with an expert to be able to help you design and spec out those systems with the lighting, the camera, the lens is very important. And then, as I tried to show a couple slides back, Vision AI has many flavors: human in the loop, automated process control. How you use the outputs of a vision system is really up to you. What's the outcome that you're after? We can help you understand that. We do a lot of walking through with customers, just, hey, let us walk you through our current processes or facility today, and you help us understand where the potential is for this technology.
Cool. And yeah, then I'll just remind folks of those upcoming regulations, whether proposed or there, and you can do more research on that, or we can send you resources if you want to send us a note. The Food Label Act, the Food Safety Modernization Act, with that food traceability final rule, and the SEC climate rules, all things folks should be aware of. If you do have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A. I'm going to ask you, Derek, though, this is one that I was thinking of as we were going through this. This sounds like a big undertaking. Like, how can you just kind of prove the concept if you wanted to try something new?
Yeah, great question, Todd. So actually, we've done a lot of work on this. So we've made this easier. So, if you want to go out, what I'd recommend, go out to your line, wherever you think the opportunity would be to apply vision. Take your camera, standard camera. Any of the cameras today are good enough from the pixels and the resolution that they have. And just capture a 30-second to 2-minute video. Try to hold it as stable as possible. If you have a tripod, even better. Happy, and then ClearObject's more than happy to take that video, and we'll demonstrate to you what's capable, what our system can do today, what the outputs of that system can do. And we have within our website, we have ability even to upload that with a description of kind of the problem, to which then we can speed up the process and really join a meeting showing you, hey, on your data, here's the AI system working, here's the outputs that it would generate. And really at that point, we're proving the feasibility of the model to capture the information that you want to understand for your process. And at that point, it's just a matter of implementation. So
cool. And then one other thing. So one thing I mentioned earlier, Derek, was that SEC climate rule and how public companies are going to have to report their emissions and things. Because I have insider information, I know that we've actually helped companies cut their emissions. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, good point. What we have done is, so again, this gets back to understanding the quality of your product. But we worked with a customer that really, it was a manufacturing process of combination of raw materials and temperature that really has a big impact on the quality of that product. But again, they were taking samples. They had to take their samples, send it to a lab, and then they would get results. What we were able to prove, using a vision system that was taking real-time accuracy measurements, feeding that information back to the controls, they were able to then put the controls in place based on the outputs of our vision system that allowed them to adjust the usage of those raw materials and that temperature to optimize the quality of the product. And it resulted in a 50% reduction in CO2 emissions at each plant. and they had 8 plants around the globe where that now they can replicate that same system. And now as well, they're measuring quality in the same way across all those plants that they didn't have before.
You said 50, not 15, 15, right?
50%. Yep.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. One of the articles I was reading on that, they were actually talking about Kraft and their macaroni facilities and like just how much heat and energy it takes to dry out all that macaroni. In that, like the food and beverage is one of the largest creators of emissions in the U.S. So that was news to me. That was surprising.
Yeah. It's a good, that's what happens when we work with good partners. You can use the outputs of our system. They obviously have the domain knowledge and the expertise around their processes and knowing what data would help them be able to make those decisions. But that's where we can help really turn that data into reality.
Great. Thank you. So I'll do one quick last call. It doesn't look like anybody has any questions coming in. But thank you all for joining us today. Hope you learned a little bit of something, or at least are pointed in the right direction. We're happy to continue the conversation if you want to reach out to us. You can find any of us, just first name dot last name at clearobject.com or sales@clearobject.com, and we'll put you in touch with an expert who can help walk you through some of the options. But otherwise, I hope it was educational, that you understand what's coming on, and that you are prepared for when and if all of these things become reality. So again, thank you for your time. And we will send out the recording on this. It probably won't come out until tomorrow, but keep an eye on your email. And let us know if you have any questions. Thank you very much and have a fantastic day.
Thank you, everyone.